What if I told you that some of the most successful people in the world might be living with undiagnosed autism? Today, we're diving into a fascinating psychological phenomenon that challenges everything we think we know about neurodivergence. And yes, we're going to talk about some very surprising behavioral patterns that might make you see autism in a completely new light. Today, we're examining something that researchers are just beginning to understand: how autism can hide in plain sight, especially among highly successful individuals. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what we uncover today. Let's start with something absolutely mind-blowing. During his 17-minute inaugural address, Donald Trump used 641 hand gestures. To put that in perspective, the average president uses about 152 gestures in a similar speech. Obama averaged 96, Biden 134. But Trump? He literally quadrupled the norm with what linguistics professor Christopher Hart describes as systematic and not random at all movements. Now, before you think this is just about politics, hold on. This isn't political commentary. It's a window into something far more intriguing. We're looking at how autism spectrum traits can remain completely unnoticed when they're wrapped in privilege, authority, and unshakable confidence. What we're seeing might be neurodivergence hiding behind success. Stanford developmental psychologists have spent the last decade uncovering something remarkable. They have found that adults in their 70s and 80s who've built business empires, raised families, and achieved extraordinary success, all while having no idea they were compensating for neurological differences. These are people who would have been obviously identified as autistic if they'd been born into different circumstances. The statistics are incredible. A recent Italian study found that among adults diagnosed with autism later in life, 33.5% had never been clinically diagnosed with any psychiatric condition. The median age of diagnosis was 23, but the range went all the way up to 55 years old. Here's where Trump's gesturing becomes genuinely fascinating from a psychological perspective. Unlike typical politicians who avoid overly theatrical movements, Trump uses them systematically. His signature OK pinch, aggressive finger thrusts, and L-shaped gestures aren't random. They follow strict patterns. Inward points accompany first-person pronouns. Outward points mirror references to others, and downward points mark specific locations. For autism researchers, this type of systematic gestural behavior is immediately recognizable. We're seeing repetitive actions that serve a regulatory purpose, consistent patterns that provide sensory feedback, and movements that intensify with stress or excitement. It's like watching a perfectly calibrated system in action, which is classic autism spectrum behavior. Now let's talk about something that might surprise you: Trump's famous McDonald's habit. 2 Big Macs, 2 Filet-O-Fish sandwiches, chocolate milkshake, always the same order, always eaten with utensils, never with hands. He removes the bread from burgers and orders steak well done with ketchup, which horrifies professional chefs, but makes perfect sense from a neurodivergent perspective. Dr. Amanda Rodriguez from Johns Hopkins's Adult Autism Diagnosis Clinic sees patterns here that go way beyond personal preference. When we assess adults for autism, rigid food rituals are one of the most persistent indicators, she explains. But here's the kicker. Society interprets the exact same behaviors completely differently based on context. A billionaire eating pizza with a fork? That's just quirky. Anyone else doing it? That's when families start suggesting professional evaluation. Linguistic experts have documented something they call tangentiality in Trump's speaking patterns, jumping between subjects with no apparent connection. His sentence structure has become less complex over time, and his use of absolute terms like always and never has increased by 13%. Critics often describe his speeches as unfocused and rambling, but here's what's fascinating. These same speech patterns can indicate exceptional pattern recognition in autism. What neurotypical people perceive as scattered thinking might actually be a brain connecting vast databases of information and seeing relationships others miss. Dr. Michael Thompson from MIT explains that autistic thinking often operates through association rather than linear progression. If someone jumps from trade deficits to crowd sizes to TV ratings, they might be following connections that aren't obvious to neurotypical individuals. Body language experts have noted Trump's apparent avoidance of unexpected physical contact. Yet he strategically uses controlled touch in specific situations. Random contact seems overwhelming, but predictable controlled touch becomes a powerful communication tool. This perfectly aligns with autism research. It's not that autistic individuals can't use touch strategically. They just need control over when, how, and where it happens. This pattern extends to his social interactions. Trump appears most comfortable in hierarchically structured situations where social rules are clear and predictable. State dinners and formal events? No problem. Spontaneous social interactions. Body language experts note visible tension and obvious compensation behaviors. Here's the most striking part of this analysis. It's not really about any one individual. It's about how autism can be simultaneously visible and invisible depending on your perspective. Wealth and privilege create buffers that transform neurological differences into charming quirks. Dr. Rodriguez has assessed Fortune 500 CEOs, federal judges, and world-famous surgeons who sit in her office at age 50 or 60, asking why their marriages failed and why they feel like aliens at social gatherings despite their professional success. The same traits that made them incredibly effective in controlled, structured environments became obstacles in the unpredictable social world. They've spent decades wearing a mask, building complex compensatory systems that work brilliantly until they don't. The psychological cost is usually paid through anxiety, depression, and relationships that never quite connect, even when everyone involved is trying their best. This research is revolutionary because it challenges our fundamental assumptions about what autism looks like. If we only study autism in children or individuals requiring significant daily support, we miss millions of adults who've created elaborate systems to camouflage their neurological differences. Each missed diagnosis represents decades of someone believing they're fundamentally flawed instead of understanding they're simply different. New research suggests that autistic traits in leadership positions might actually be advantages. Enhanced pattern recognition, reduced susceptibility to social pressure, methodical decision-making, and laser-focused attention on areas of interest. The same traits that make small talk exhausting might make complex problem-solving more effective. Autism research is rapidly evolving from the outdated image of the isolated child rocking in a corner. Modern understanding recognizes autism as a neurological variation that can coexist with incredible ability, innovation, and achievement. The intense focus that makes casual conversation difficult can drive world-changing breakthroughs. The demand for routine that appears rigid can provide the consistency needed for massive undertakings. As Dr. Rodriguez emphasizes, autism isn't a disorder to cure. It's a neurological variation that creates both challenges and strengths. The goal isn't to fix anyone, but to help individuals understand themselves and build lives that work with their neurology, not against it. For millions of adults who've spent decades feeling slightly out of sync with the world, this new understanding offers something invaluable. the possibility that they're not broken, just different. Their struggles with social conventions aren't personal failures, but reflections of how their brains are wired. Their intense interests and need for consistency aren't deficits, but natural expressions of neurodivergent thinking. Sometimes the most remarkable discoveries come from simply changing our perspective, from looking for what we expect to see to actually observing what's really there. For autism awareness, this shift in viewpoint might be the key to understanding not just individual differences, but the incredible richness of human neurodiversity.